Hi, everyone. So we're going to start off by talking about a little bit of who am I? Who am I and why am I going to be speaking to you today about flow? So first off, I do podcasts. I do lots of them, and I absolutely adore getting to do podcasts. So I do a podcast called Isometric on Relay FM, and that's a gaming podcast. I also do a podcast called Vector that deals with technology and culture. I also do a podcast called The iMore Show where we deal with Apple News. And I do some other little ones here and there whenever I can because I adore them. And I'm also a licensed psychotherapist. So I deal with anxiety, depression, parenting, and often when I'm talking on the podcast, we deal with the psychology of technology. And so between those two things, I thought, what a great thing to talk about how we can use psychology to make web applications and your apps even better. So we're going to start off talking about flow. Now, I'm going to try to say his name. Flow was first discovered by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, and that was in the 1970s. What he wanted to know is certain people will do something for none other but the joyous experience of doing something. Not even for the end product, not even for making profit, but just for its own enjoyment. And I was so lucky. I was speaking yesterday to many of you, and a lot of you are already trying to enhance user experience by applying these principles into your applications already. Enjoyment appears at the boundary between boredom and anxiety when challenges are balanced by the person's capacity itself to act. And that's what we're going to be dealing with. So I know that it's 10 o'clock in the morning, but I'm actually going to be working with you so that we can brainstorm because I thought, what would be better than having all of us work at thinking of how we can make our applications have more flow. So is everyone kind of with me with that? Yeah. Okay, well, wait. Let's try this one more time because I'm going to need you all. Okay, so is everyone with me with this? Yeah. That was, I'll give that like an 80. That was pretty good. So I'm going to be asking different ways in which you use in your application. We're going to be talking about brainstorming, and we're going to be discussing what exactly is flow. So this is if you've ever had an activity where you are fully immersed in that activity, where your emotions are just contained, you feel happy, time, space, anything else happening is almost irrelevant. It's that just joy, rapture. Your body just moves without conscious thought. We become one with our experience at hand. Has anyone ever been through an experience, painting, art, an activity, an application, a game, where they've ever felt that loss of time and space fully within that experience? Is anyone? I have. Excellent. So now we're going to go through a little bit of where exactly do you find flow. Now, flow is found when you have balanced your skill level with the challenges at hand. And that's really important because it's in between those two places that you find flow. If something is too far outside of your skill level, you will actually end up feeling anxiety. Now, has anyone ever done an application, used an application where they felt anxious while they use it? So I have a lot. If ever I feel lost, if ever I feel I don't know what next to do, if I can't find that button, if I'm playing that game and there's like too many bosses coming down to kill me, if I'm, instead of using Word, I'm using Pages, and now the taskbar, I don't understand it, and I'm not able to be there. And so what you want to do is you want to try to figure out the balance between that. Now, if the challenge is too low for your skill level, you could actually end up bored. which is not great for any application either. So what we try to do is you want to try to balance people's levels of skill with the task at hand and try to bring them up at equal levels, which at times can be difficult because they don't usually work out the same way. So we end up either having a graph of as we become more skilled, the challenges are not great enough, or the inverse. It's too difficult for the task at hand. And this can be even using a web page where there's too many buttons. We might feel confused and we don't understand how to get on with what our task or our needs are at the time. Now, flow actually first started out at the workforce. And now we know that we've been trying to apply flow into all activities, not just at work, not just at play, but in everything we do. Because if we make people, we're naturally averse to feeling uncomfortable. We don't like that, right? If anyone's ever asked you to do something and you're like, I don't know how to do that, you're like, nah, maybe I don't want to do this. And if you feel comfortable or you know you have a skill at something, it makes it much more easy to intersperse yourself into that activity. A really horrible thing can happen if the challenge of the activity increases greatly faster than what my skill is at the activity. And then you can end up having, like if I open up an application and I immediately do not know how to use this application, the odds of me saying, you know what, I'm going to use another application instead that may be simpler version or maybe something that I'm more comfortable with, and we might just say, I'm just going to bail upon this. And so this can happen a lot for people that are not as skilled as someone else at using an application. And that's the barrier to entry that can often happen, especially if you have a very complex application. So a lot of people that are using, Photoshop and there's just too many buttons and they don't know how to deal with it, can often say, you know what, this is more than what I can handle. We've found that after having, we kind of can make good choices when we have the choice between, say, 3 to 7 different things that we do not understand. So when it goes beyond that level, it can be really, really difficult for us and we can feel lost and then we might just stop. So the benefits of flow. We found out that user engagement is directly related to flow. It actually is what flow is all about. And I'm going to go through all of the steps and pieces of what exactly is flow and how can we apply this. Now, Csikszentmihalyi is thankfully working with Microsoft to try to make their applications have more flow, allow for more user engagement, and to make people feel more comfortable and make them more intuitive. Websites that have good flow can keep someone there for hours. I can often be seen on Reddit or another website when I should probably be working on something else at work. It's just that nice time sink when I can feel comfortable and do nothing. And so even people when we workforces that have great sense of flow, capability, user feedback, it's wonderful because people will work longer, they will enjoy it because they have that happy feeling and less anxiety. They're also not going to get sick as much. And the wonderful thing is that you're not even really working because you love what you're doing. So let's go into a little bit of what is flow, and we're going to deal with it all together of how do we already apply it. I know a lot of people have already tried to apply this into your applications, and for others, how we can think about how to apply it in the future. So the first most important thing are clear goals. So even if you're working on an application that might be, say, a Photoshop, how do I get to where I want to go so that I clearly understand that? So if you're working on a game, that's really straightforward. I remember when I used to play a game a long time ago, some of you might know, EverQuest. You would not really know, you know you have to kill the boss, but you don't know where he's located, you don't know where he's going, you don't know how to get there, and that was very anxiety-ridden. It was really stressful. Versus a game like World of Warcraft, where once you've decided to defeat a certain boss, there would be a clear line of how you have to get there. Even in applications where you're dealing with learning a language or spreadsheet, how do I do what I need to do is really important so that I do not feel lost. When we feel lost, our levels of anxiety go up, our levels of feeling competent go down. And that's not a great experience for us. We really, as humans, we don't like to feel incompetent and lost. Intense and focused concentration on the present moment. This one's really important in an app. This is when you're in the zone. When you're doing something, you are allowed to stay in that, and nothing is going to distract you from the task at hand. What are some things in an application or in a web app that could disrupt your concentration? Think of it. What could it be? Pop-ups, ads, especially those blinking ads or ads that chase you along the screen, cause a lot of anxiety. What else could be something that would disrupt you from your concentration or focus? Yes, poor typography, a difficulty in how to figure out where you have to go to the next step. I have a really great one, and I'll see if you all know this. So I had one that really bothered me when I used to use Word, and I'm trying to work on my thesis in grad school. And I would have someone pop up trying to be helpful, but really just disrupted my concentration and slowly annoyed me. Does anyone have any idea of who I'm speaking of? Clippy, our lovely friend. And I know Clippy was really trying to tell me, right? But truly what I was thinking every time when I, saw Clippy, which is true, because he's already just saying, you don't know what you're doing, and here I am going to help you all the time. And the worst part is Clippy never told me how to get rid of Clippy, right? Out of all the things I really wanted to do. And so I would have to, I'm already lost trying to figure out something, clicked the wrong thing by mistake, and now I have to get rid of Clippy at the same time, only to know that he is going to eventually pop back up at some other time. Yeah, I know. That's exactly what I thought. I blamed him, and now I know it's finally actually true. So these type of things sometimes, and Clippy's really interesting, because most of body language we read through how we actually enter space. So most of it, we interpret body language. It's usually not spoken. And so because of that, because Clippy was just text-based, we would interpret what he was really saying. And I would often actually be speaking to, I'm like, get rid of, Clippy, I don't want to see you. And no, I'm not looking for the text button. Thank you so much. Stop it. But I would be interpreting what Clippy was doing. And he actually also disrupted another piece of flow, which is he started to make me feel a little bit self-conscious about my task at hand, which is not great for feeling flow. So it's okay to have someone that is there to be helpful, but you want to make sure that it is not something that we are going to be able to misinterpret or it's overly used. And that's why they finally did get rid of Clippy. Was there anyone here that actually loved Clippy? One Clippy. Why did you love Clippy? Oh. He was fun. He was. Yes? Yes. Yes, that's true. You could criticize Clippy instead of yourself. Right. But over the board, most people did not feel comfortable with Clippy, so you have to be careful about user engagement with anything that happens to be on screen. This is the most important piece, which is the balance between skill and challenge. So you want to be able to feel competent and secure and empowered. Now, what are things that could disrupt the difference between balance and skill? Any ideas? I'm just going to wait here. Don't worry. Pardon? Lock? Yes, it could be. It could be something that's luck-based instead of skill-based. It could be an update that has suddenly changed too quickly the user interface. So I don't usually update exactly for this reason, because it may be more things change than the 3 to 7 things that I can feel comfortable in dealing with. And so often updates may be for the better, but it may change the way that I interact on the screen and actually slow me down, because I'm going to have to re-go through that learning process. And so it's also really important when you think about how you will update to make sure that those two things are balanced. What are some things that you can do to make sure that skill and the challenge level of whatever people are doing are going to be more increased? Because what you can do is you can increase someone's skill to meet with the challenge at hand. How can you do this? Yeah, exactly. Tutorials, how to do something, videos on how to deal with a challenge of a situation. Csikszentmihalyi had spoken about how we figured out that people can process about 110 bits per second, which seems like a lot of information that we can process. And we're single processing units. Like, we can't actually multitask. We like to think we can, but we truly can't. So also, being inundated with too much information, just processing my speech takes about 60. So that's why it's difficult if too many things are happening. If you're working at a task at hand and someone is speaking to you, you can feel that area of irritation. So too many things happening on the screen at once can also increase your levels of anxiety in an application. So you want to be careful with the pacing as information comes towards you. If it's too fast, we might feel anxious. If it's too slow, people are going to feel bored. So it's the same reason why, like, you can't do math and be chased by someone with a water gun. Well, you're going to have to choose, either do the math or get hit with the water. Like, you have to pick and choose, because we can only deal with so many things. And difficulty levels can cause a huge barrier to entry. When I speak to people about applications, and I say, you know what, this is a really wonderful application to use, some people will say, well, it's too difficult, or I don't understand it, or I don't know how to do that. And so that's something that's a really interesting problem for people to solve, especially if you have a very complex application. Are there any people here that have figured out great ways that they deal with helping new people go into their application and feel comfortable while using it? Right. Beautiful, beautiful. And it's so true. People get really anxious when you start with nothing on the screen, or even for writing, to have nothing there, even to have a few words makes people feel a little bit more comfortable in user engagement. And those type of tutorial programs are really great, especially when you don't know how to do something. And so to have a little, do you want to learn how to do this? Or what do all of these buttons do when your cursor goes over it? I find it really frustrating when I don't know how to use something and then I don't know how to figure out what this icon actually means in order to use it. And so starting small, and people could skip forward if they don't need to, is probably a better way to kind of pace people if possible. So this is kind of the results of the experience between skill and challenge. So when you start off with low challenge and low skill, you end up with apathy. You don't really care, and you can't really be bothered. And then if you have your skill level is now low challenge and mediocre skill, you're just going to be bored while you use it. What we're aiming for in the end is either, when you're feeling, instead of feeling, say, something that's really, really hard, but you have very little skill level, you're just going to feel anxious while you use an application. What we're looking for is the merging of perfect skill and high skill, high anxiety, or you're low skilled, and there's a low challenge base or low barrier to entry in using this application. And so being able to even ask when you want to figure out how people feel in your application, by using this similar chart, you can find out where they are probably feeling on their skill level and the difficulty of use so that people feel comfortable and safe while they deal with what they're doing for their app. And it actually works for anything that you happen to be doing at the moment. And Csikszentmihalyi would test people throughout the day and say, how do you feel right now while you do X? And people would answer that, and then they would go back and see, well, is this low skill and high skill? And that's how he has created this chart, which works out really well when you're trying to feel, why do people feel a certain way in the application that you have, and then to ask why that might be. Timelessness. How many people here have just like, you're in an application and time goes by and you didn't even know that the time had left them? How many people? What applications do that? Because I'll even do that on an Excel chart. When I'm going, and I can sometimes just be stuck in it, and I'm like, just don't bother me. I've got my groove going, I'm moving through, and it feels really good. What are some different applications that give that to you? Right? Xcode, good. What else? Yeah, Facebook, dreaded Facebook. TimeSync, very good, yes. What else? Yes, yeah, Candy Crush, I do Candy Crush. Don't judge me, Ali, I see you looking at me. Yes, Candy Crush, different video games, Shadow of Mordor. I'll get lost in an area unless too many bosses come and attack me, then I'm bailing. Too high of anxiety, I'm gonna stop for a little while as I can deal with it. The wonderful thing is that if you can get that inside of your application, now your application becomes the sought-after application that everyone's going to want to use because you actually feel good while you use it. That the experience of the activity has actually been its own reward, what we call autotelic, which is doing what you're doing. It's not even to finish what you're doing. It's just doing it in and of itself. Candy Crush never actually ends. There's always more levels. But I just enjoy that feeling of getting past things, and it's just nice to do that in and of itself. It's a wonderful feeling, that sense of competency. Immediate feedback. This is so straightforward for many applications. What are things that will ruin the feeling of immediate feedback? I'm thinking of like a 3-letter word. Thank you. Lag. Lag in an app. How many people, what is the most frustrating thing for you when you're using an application or trying to get an application out? If it is slow, laggy, it can be really frustrating. But has anyone ever used an application where they press something and you don't actually know if you've pressed it or not? That can also be something that's exceptionally frustrating. So even with a button press, there's a reason why even though the button doesn't do, you want to see that you've done something. You want to know, I have pressed the button, we now may move on. If that doesn't happen for me, I will often do I'm pressing the button like, a chicken waiting for my reward. And now it's going to really be lagged because I've pressed it so many times and it's processing all of those different things that we're dealing with. What are some things that you can do to give someone immediate feedback so that they know that they are doing the right thing or heading in the right direction? Beautiful. Yes, sound. You can use sound. What else could you use? Yep, you can use an animation so people know, right? Yes. Yes, a response. And even if there's going to be a lag time, so a lot of the old games where it's like the CD's running, you're loading up the next stage, just say, great job, you're going on to the next stage, would be enough. Or they would show a secondary animation while this is happening. So I think that something's moving while it's just waiting to process so that I feel comfortable. I've moved on to the next stage. The faster that you can reward people for doing the right thing, the more that people will want to continue in an application. It can become too much. So Clippy was too much feedback when I'm not actually lost, which just made me feel bad about myself. And maybe I saw Clippy more often because I had a harder time figuring out what to do when I was doing my thesis than you did. But you want it to be meaningful feedback, something that's going to be helpful and supportive and inverse to that. Knowing that you will be able to do what is happening within the application, that's going to be all right. And so this goes into tutorials. This goes into an understanding of how this application is used best in order to better your success at wherever you are hoping to do. And it's interesting because that's what I do in therapy, is exactly that. Is I try to figure out where people are and where they want to go, and what will be that fastest path to be able to go there. And when I am able to say to someone, I know what you want and I can help you make that better, right away I can see anxiety goes down. So when you're using an application, that exact same thing is like, oh, you want to make a beautiful picture? I'll be able to help you do that, and we'll be doing this like teamwork. Instead of, you're going to make this great picture and, maybe you'll be able to figure out how to use me. Maybe you won't. That will increase anxiety and decrease flow within an application. Testing flow in your app. So how do you know how people feel while you use your application? What do people usually do when you're beta testing an application to see how do people like it? What do you do? How many people actually test out to see what people think of their application before they send it out? And what do you do to find out? What kind of feedback do you use? Yeah? You watch them use it? And how can you tell when they're happy versus anxious or versus upset or frustrated? Right. Right. So body language is a nice one in order to use. If you have the luxury of being able to see people while they're using their application, that's wonderful. What are other things that people use? Yeah? You can use analytics, how long they're playing, how long they might get stuck on a certain stage, why and why not. You can also use, I'm going to give you, there's one that's like a Likert scale, which is a direct just question set of, how is this application working for you? So did you find that the skill versus the challenges of what you want to get done, is it balanced? Did you find that this was too difficult for your barrier of entry? Yes, no, and if so, why? To ask, do you wish that you had more training, more support when you use this app? Did you ever feel overwhelmed? At what stages? At what parts? What tool did you not understand how to use? What icon did you find confusing? Were you able to fully focus? So was there something distracting that was happening within this application that stopped you from your workflow? Did you ever feel angry when you used the app? So I love looking at gaming videos where people have like thrown a controller or like launched something or like scream at someone else when they're dealing with it. I would assume that would then become a yes. Or impatient. So that would be that like it was too slow or things weren't happening at the right speed for what I wish that they would be dealing with. And were the goals clear of how to get to what I wanted to do within the application? So a Likert scale works out really well to be able to do that. So different things that we'll go through, some of the different things that disrupt flow in an app. So some of the stuff that we've spoken about and other things that you've noticed, what are things that disrupt flow for your app? Yes, too many choices. Good point. Yeah, true. What else might there be? Yes, unusual interface. Yeah. Yeah. Or something unintuitive. Yes, inconsistencies. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Down the rabbit hole. Pop-up ads that come in the middle of while you are doing something versus in between activities. I find that that's a huge difference. I don't mind ads in between levels, in between when I finish something coming up, but ads that are actually in the middle of something else, I find that's actually causes me a good deal of anxiety. We'll go through some others. So jarring sounds that come out of the application when I do not expect them. Having colors that I find distracting. I find that Game Center has some jarring colors and interface, which I'm not really that thrilled with. Jittery movements. We like smooth movements. There's a reason why ads are actually, like pop-up ads, create our attention. We are naturally made to look at things that move. Things that move were a danger to us a long time in our evolutionary sphere. So things that don't move, we are able to ignore. So if I go like this, it's probably you've looked at my hand, because things that moved would attack us, hurt us, or fall on us, and so we needed to be prepared for that. And so that's why ads have become more and more disruptive, because people started to ignore them. We actually found that stationary ads on the side of the page, we completely ignore. And so then they started to make ads with sound, which would then create a little bit of attention. Then they made sounds that would blink. And then they made sounds that would follow us along the screen, or even follow us as we scroll down on a web page. And those were more disruptive for our feeling of flow and actually caused us a good deal of anxiety and stress. And updates. Updates that change things, faster than what we are comfortable for. And everyone, that's a really difficult one, because someone that might have a lot of competency in your application will not find a problem with something, versus someone that is new, then having an update that changes many things could cause a lot of anxiety, and some people will find that they don't actually like the application after that because too many things changed too quickly. So some of the things are more difficult to figure out a solution to than others. What are things that keep people within a web page or on an app? Why do we keep using certain pages versus others? Pardon me? Yes, achievement. Yes, definitely. What else? Yes, saving time. Yeah. Pardon me? Having fun. Yes, that feeling of enjoyment. There's no cost on that page, or there's something that I really am comfortable with. Yeah. Also feeling that welcoming look. Apple stores do a great job with making something that is really comfortable and spacious. Having too many things on a screen at once, if you are not comfortable in an application, can be really disconcerting as well. So having that kind of welcoming feeling that you are not overwhelmed with too many things that might be moving, or too many things that you have to look at. And that easy just to consume information. Things that are intuitive to me, things that I've already understood, or having a way that I can then understand that. So I will ask you that question and have you leave and hopefully have something that you can think about with it is, how well do you flow? Thank you.